Yuan, ta chi chen kong na ban gong, zong zhi jian, nyam li mang po jie de sam sons. Ni ten de zhiwa yuan, ni yo ne.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. And, now regarding what we learned this morning, whether we refer to it as the exercise for expelling the stale winds or the 9 rounds of breathing, it's referred to in both ways. She just would like to give you an opportunity to ask any questions now, since we had to end kind of abruptly for lunch. And she said, and who knows, maybe some of you used your lunch break to practice and were very diligent. So if you have anything that's come up for you in the course of practicing that you want to clarify, or any questions, please, we can take a little time for that now.
This picture has the channels have 3 different colors, and the right channel is white, the left channel is red, and the middle channel is blue.
Yeah, so we're going to get there. Yeah. So she's going to get, over the course of these teachings, she's going to talk some about meditating on the channels. So the way that we visualize and meditate on the channels, and a little bit with the winds too. But before we go there, because you usually do this in conjunction with visualizing yourself as the Yidam deity, so she also wants to first talk some about that.
And that gong shibanan susole yedam yuna, yedam kare na chores, mina dina, madiri yogini, dina parius, paikola yore.
So,
man, that gong chala katan zingoya da pango you put him since in la gong tan the state, robs of shewing.
So, and then, of course, as she mentioned before, if you have a Yidam deity that you usually visualize, that you usually practice, you can just do that. And if not, usually what we do is we meditate on ourselves as Vajrayogini or Vajravarahi, same thing. So then, with she wants to talk a little bit also about, what the different attributes represent, like there's the different hand implements, the curved knife and the skull cup, and like what these all represent, and so forth. So
Tambo de la Karishna Vajri Yogini Karison Sinata, also the Lagom, in the Lagom book of Solatini Sosoke. Jiram Zeta, Lagom, the Jiram Zayer. Jiram de Soso Lachi, the Gapsolotini, Sosoka Lucia Chaka Ranji Maimba, then the Tona Jacongo. Tata kuna batonga tsakson kolo sote tona che gongore mato ipan na shi dodo rebe che kara na shi de kunya yo mares.
So for instance, this meditation on ourselves as Vajrayogini or another Yidam deity, this is what we refer to as the generation stage. And it's one that actually really transforms our experience it can transform our experience of reality entirely, because we're not visualizing, like we're not kind of identifying with ourselves as these ordinary impure bodies of flesh and blood. Instead, we're identifying with the divine form or the enlightened form of the deity. And so when we visualize ourselves as the deity, we're not visualizing ourselves as like consisting of matter, or like being a form of flesh and blood. But it's like, this kind of like apparitional appearance, this like rainbow light that's empty in essence. And it's the same way with the subtle body. We visualize the subtle body in the same way that we visualize the form of the deity, that it is, so not like when you look at this image of these three channels here, it's not like this two-dimensional image that we're seeing on the image, but it's like they're, it's this, the channels themselves are also like rainbow light, they're insubstantial in nature, and they're empty of intrinsic essence.
Patati,
You had looked like you had a question, Amadea. I just was trying to get clear if we had moved on from.
No, that's okay. I was
Okay.
just, it was affecting.
Oh.
To be bringing awareness back to that breath was, after all these years.
Allora gociamo da c'è legge da Karenina con niente parte perché c'è more.
Yeah, she said she's happy she was able to do that for you. And in fact, like as practitioners, we really can do that exercise of the 9 rounds of breathing daily. It really should be a daily part of our practice, that we always do that.
Nima tapar majena tene nyama jesha de tribati sina so kaje sangre o na cheche nyame ji pecha cheche nyame ji nipa kaya to talent sangre ai so no to ke kalati pela kalati nima de chesje ya yina je chesje kare shimbo de shira ha ko ma ha ko chu nyame sinye de 산뜻이 되게 년 다발 냠에 제스나 이 소소라 내가 통거요 아고를 네 소소를 지남 좀 때마다 다 제니 제니니 제 마포제 도다니 제 아마를 했나 무대로 야게 야메게 뜻이야 인지 뜻이야 야게 뜻이야 고게 뜻이야 도다제 도다제 그래 시우는 지안 탈시 밤이 밤아지 Little child, Chunyamne Chulas Gina Miba Mari, Nipa Miba Mari. So get any Yamata and the day get any Nipa Tonta way of Mari.
So actually, if we do, like when we're really consistent and regular in our practice, like we do it every day, and even if we don't do it every day, at least to like continue the consistency, like a regular consistent practice, is really important, because when we kind of like try on all these different practices, but we don't really commit to one and do it all the time, like regularly, then we don't really get to experience the power of it. So it's sort of like if you're at a food, like there are a bunch of different dishes, and you kind of you don't want to like decide on just one, and you taste a little bit of this, and then you taste a little bit of that, and then you can't really decide which is delicious anymore, because you've got like so many different tastes on your palate, on your palate. So you can't really distinguish anymore, like kind of the flavors or the qualities of any of them. And so like when we do a practice daily, then we really get to experience the blessing. We really get to understand the power, the benefit, the blessing of that particular practice. Whereas if we kind of are jumping around a lot and don't really commit to anything, don't do anything consistently, then we might kind of like give up and be like, oh, there's not really, there's nothing to this, there's no power in this practice, and we might even give it up. Because it's like, for instance, if you study a little bit of German and a little bit of English, but you don't really commit to either one, and then you come out not really being able to speak either language very well. So, not really being an expert in any of them, we're just kind of dabbling in everything. So it isn't that Dharma doesn't have blessings. It doesn't reflect on the Dharma, the quality and power of the Dharma, but it's just because we haven't really given it a chance. We haven't really gone deeply into a particular practice to really be able to experience the benefit and blessings. But that's the way that we do is by really committing and doing it as a daily practice.
I just want to decide which practices for them. And I know it's an individual thing.
Did nyamlin damanda yorwa tini so ki nyamlin tachuya gande tachuya yore kain sana.
수소 타줘야 돼. 수소는 그라 가래 지랑 가래서 가오야 나더니 내 망서 제거를.
Well, if, for instance, when it comes to a deity, often people have a pull, to a particular deity that you feel like drawn to, you particularly like, you should do that one.
근데 가와 육바 찍고 같은 거 말해. They're long tree long to the go.
But you shouldn't just do what you like. You also have to get the appropriate initiations, get the empowerment, transmission, and teachings for that particular practice, and then really practice it.
So there's Tibetan yoga, but there's also like I'm a deity practitioner, initiated. I have all the initiations, not a problem. Also in the Chud lineage, one of the Chud lineages. So do I do my Chud every day? Do I do my Jodini every day? So I have several things.
And I'm more di dorte na to na te yore, wa mu to yore, ni yang chu yang te yore chu. That word is so hard for me in Tibetan. We say chud, and every time I say it with the Tibetan pronunciation, they don't understand me. Like I can't say it. So, yeah. So, deni yang che yorowa. Deni penachu chena yagarebe yangna dorjina dorma chena yagarebe de tachu to be yorowa.
쭉 더더 남자마다 꽤 통통했어. 말에는 빠빠빠빠 더제 파모 따라 산제 미나 아니 댐조 아니 아치 아니 아수zoke 라 롱경어제 야다 아니 검제 So she said, if you're only having trouble deciding between Vajrayogini and Chud, that's great. You can do both. She said, right. But she said, there's not, first of all, there's not so much distance between those two. And also, there's no reason why you can't do both. She said she herself does every morning, Vajrayogini, Tara, Medicine Buddha, Chakra Sambhara, Achi. And she also does the different wind exercises and meditation. So every morning, she has a bunch of practices that she does. So that when there are two, that, it's doable. You should be able to do both. No.
It didn't work.
Right.
It's hard.
No, I know.
가이스나 냉장 레하우 차디. 배자 빼먹고. 롱 사다나요레 통통요레 딘딩고요레. 소소때 소라때는 저래 랭아 유나니 링포데냐메지 통통냐메지. 고노잖아고. 나한테서 뭐다 이렇게 무슨 고파 자야한테 수요래. 기분도 허요래. 이나야 디사 기갑서 고파 찍고 많이 받.
So she said, actually these days we have it so easy because there's so much available to us, so many different sadhanas and different lengths of sadhanas and many different things to sort of choose from and ways that we can connect with the practices. And she said, actually, we should really try to avoid having this attitude there's not enough time. Because she said we can make time for what's important to us. We make time to do the things we want to do. We make time to walk. We make time to do things that are important to us. So if we want to make the time, we can always make the time. And she said, and furthermore, when you're walking, when you go on a walk, you shouldn't separate that from your Dharma practice, but make it walking meditation.
With regard to the calmness that many of us receive, traditionally there are three parts.
Mhm.
There's the empowerment, there's the Lung, and then the tree, which we don't always get, which is the instructions to do the particular practice. Could Drupon comment on this, because sometimes
Like that
it
they're
becomes missing.
separate, yeah.
Yeah, it gets chopped up.
So what he's saying is the Tibetan words for empowerment, and Lung is transmission, and Chi is teaching or instruction. Tiniti Wang Lung Chi Chitang Toya Yorwa, Yiniam Ding Sam Penati, Sama Yamdu Samsam Matok Yorwa, Wang To, Yiniam Chi Mato, Yang Lung Mato, Tini Samsam Lung To, Yiniam Wang Mato, Tini Tenda couple.
나 등산 찌개나 가보래 찌개나 내가오래 내 말에는 당은 또 들어가는 컴퓨터요 말에 가봐요 말에 인기미지 다 왕다 롱다 찌개자 쇼군 인기미지 나와다 그래 아 등산에는 그이 그런 롱제 쇼거든 자자나니 롱쇼 쇼리 좀는 쇼 쇼리 Edite le lao chadele Korantor kaya maris yinaya wangje topsona na tini nyamle je chowa je chore le la shire tini kare le la shire droma na shi dorje samba tini de so benam jo je karesna pecha loya yuna loya mina ha down tini je Obajan son Chingachan, any not as a down and drawn out Jiris, and James a gate down and draw by Mari. There is the Karis and Soso Compa Jaya down Sim Karela, Compa Jaya, the Nyam the children draw over is.
So she said, maybe, yeah, on the one hand, like, because things maybe are more broken up or tend to be isolated, you're not getting it all at once, these days usually. So on the one hand, yeah, maybe it's difficult, but on the other hand, it's kind of easier because there's so many like opportunities, and now we even on like people are even giving, you can get these things online and like, over the internet. It used to be, before she said there's like no internet, nobody had phones, and they would you would have to go to these like month-long events, to get empowerments or transmissions and teachings, and it would be like an all day long thing. And so now, there's so much accessibility, there's so much that's accessible. And also she said, it's okay. You shouldn't think that like, okay, maybe you just have the empowerment. You shouldn't think, oh, because I don't have the transmission or teaching, I can't practice it, but you start practicing, you go ahead, and especially with kind of the less, kind of like not highest yoga tantra deities, like if it's Tara or Vajrasattva, even without empowerment first, you can still do the mantra, you can still practice it with the intention to get all the initiations when you can, and especially also, even if you don't have like really specific teachings, you can recite the mantra, you can have your mala with you, and like even while you're walking, you can even sort of secretly recite the mantra, without making, much noise, like just kind of quietly to yourself, in situations like in other situations and things. So, I mean, essentially, the more Dharma that you practice, the better. So you shouldn't ever feel discouraged because you don't have everything, from practicing.
Tangaranda na Yala Yagali Yongo Jimchi Kares. Some many person than the Jia Yomari. Mine Chuya Pochi Chana, Lobjaya Pochi Chan, Lobjaya Pochi on the Chuya Pochi Ragoris and the Digi Pohon Kon, then the Compajan. Zamzam, the Dratches and the Kalata, Tumia, the Sotiami, but the Rigan Yonis. The digital Tinum of the Parisina. The digital, some of the Tansona, or Chuchi and let out chatting.
So, when she left India, she escaped Tibet to go to India on foot, crossing the Himalayas, in secret, and endured. It was a really hard journey. Sometimes like a whole week went by and they didn't have food. And they were hiking, in the Himalayas, and the weather, it was extremely cold. And this was, but this felt like nothing, because it was like the purpose, the reason, the motivation for her was Dharma, having access to the Dharma, because, under the conditions there in Tibet, there wasn't the freedom to fully practice the Dharma. So that was the motivation for her to escape to India. And now when she thinks about how accessible the Dharma is now compared to like what it was, it's like we have it so easy. She said it's so available.
먼저 짱마 강아 충청대 그去 제키는 저 직진 자와 제키는 강아 충청대 첨보로 zon도 비트 수수그 zon도를 수샘대
So whether we decide to make a problem big or small is like entirely up to us and the attitude of our mind. So, and whether, we can take something really small and it can become like a huge obstacle if we choose to relate to it that way. Or, we can take a really big obstacle and like not let it be an obstacle at all.
나랑 그 로지제 도아시 노르메데 나랑 그 로지제 시아나 차랑토 강아 동안 착한 말이지 나랑 그 강아데 차랑토 시아나 차랑토 디 강아데 시가제요 말이지
So she said, if we really hear her story and like what she has been through, then you will really be like, oh my gosh, I haven't even like what I consider to be hardship in my life is like just not even a fraction of that.
이제 딱 투사 뜨거래 강아를 지내데 나이 찍고 삼는 단데 강아 가려나 도르마도 나차 요나 도르도 강아 오나 도르도 강아들 도네지 간이스는 아penna 소설나 맥 la 강아 유소나 ona que 맥이 싫어 통과 메도서 빼려 하나 유나 매지 맥미 발산도 되다 나 맥게 뜻 통과도 단 되게 도선 이제 수도 나사데 녀르도 이 나치게 마텔라티 가르스나 나사 고 나야도 티 봄바 나야도 계서가 나타도 진다 가르스도 왕포 조지리데 맥마통 깜바 민조도서 백강아요 이제 뜻은 수수 나타데 가야마 대면 뜻이 수수 나타데 나타데 요르데 총도 요르 생각 참아 조조요 나랑도 배차게 보는 용도가 나 도로 제아요 말이 한국 제아요 말이 아쉽 제아요 도로 다 잠좀 년인가를 차바당도 신신가를 zopo kansa di arela ice charo de rokhana nya da sayo de ka so ta susu ke ngone susu tongda na chi chu ya po jin drum na objang ya po jin drum na so de me yo yu sa de chung chung charo da tan zam zam sam zo de mo so kale shu che do de de sam no tenga chun tang ka mi ma xie ge ka so no de ka nga chong so ti ya de sam no ka de 이 나사도 생는 아니 생각 나사를 그래.
So she said, and part of what has helped her to get through those difficulties and hardship is by not considering them to be big, and considering other, like it having kind of perspective. So it's really, when we have hardship and difficulty, the more that we're able to kind of relate to it as not being such a big deal, the better and the easier. So because we can always put our hardship, no matter how big it is, into perspective by seeing those who have it much worse, or situations that are much more difficult than ours. So like whatever, if we have some illness, if like, for instance, we have trouble with our vision, and we can't see very well, and this is causing a lot of suffering, but then we can think about those who like have like no eye, like they're completely blind, they can't see anything, or they don't have eyes, or, if we have, whatever our situation, cancer, or any kind of difficulty, illness, there's always examples of those who are way, way worse off, who are really, who don't have their limbs, or who are, really in a lot of imminent suffering. And so then that can help us to put our own problem, our own illness into perspective, which can help it actually in healing, to make it less strong. It actually, when we relate to it in that way, it actually diminishes its power. And so, like, for instance, she said when she was escaping to Tibet, and it was, a journey that lasted for over a month, and she didn't have, she only had the clothes that she was wearing, and they were walking for hours and hours and hours, and it would rain, all day, and then it was freezing at night. So the clothes on her body and her socks, she didn't have any extra clothes or different socks or different shoes, they would freeze, and so she would be in freezing clothing, like literally freezing clothing, in freezing temperatures, without, in fear of her life, like the danger of being also, found and shot and killed. And so that seems like, it was a very intense experience. And yet when she would think about the reason why she was doing it, and the goal, which was, to get to India and to have freedom of religion, and to be able to practice the Dharma, to be able to study, it was like, it was nothing in comparison to what she knew she was doing it for. So it became completely manageable, and thinking about, the reason for why. And so it's really, whatever hardship and difficulty that we have, it's all in how we relate to it. It's all really has to do with what our mind is saying, and the direction of our mind in terms of how we're relating to those obstacles and hardship. And when we can relate in a skillful way with those difficulties and hardships, there's nothing that's insurmountable. There's nothing that can't be brought onto the path.
근데 나랑 로지 제시하고 내가 산대 가서 딱 한번 충충을 상관데 배 충충 하고 그러면서 강바 충충을 대가를 띠나는데 까고 나 강바 나 대사들 강바 닝바 나 마텔로 먹고 마데 이 저도 참마 연거리 까고가 근데 차와 쉬어요리다 이가서 다 뭐로 터대요 또 창차야 근데 차와 쉬어 기용배 충충 출을 나 산에 대지 출을 로야요 말아 아 차와 밴드 니 말을 차 선동 살거요 근데 봉호때 빼나서 봉호 나서 때 라파 나서 배고 나서 근데 차와 쉬어 바르도 니 말텔라 알았어 다 진득강에 쉬어도지 나랑 왜 강아 차와는 책에도 오호는 나도 참 저기하다 차와는 쉬어 책에도 제 뭐 쉬어서 뭐 아니 뭐 대자단도 파다 비공 총총래 발견이 야꿀 꿀이라는 하고 한번 양게 빨라지 않지 우 숨쉬지도
숨쉬.
아 konsoke ambate ja na hichawre kambala hangomudu anjima rotene udu so rogoto na de karela sa dan de bla so para rogoto sagada ne amate so karete to dan bla so go kambala chawre da sona na 니는 되니 차와는 되지 칼라데 되지 뭐 쳐 막 남주가 쳐 막 어째서야 뭐 되지 우가 사도서 되지 되니 나가 될다 오 삼성 되니 나랑 삼고서 나랑 빼지버리셔 거기서 칼라라 도서야 쳐 되니 니마 차와 되는 나는 거기서 강에 되지도 나라는 강박 중정도 니마 포그모도 촌동야도 칼라사야 나랑 빼지버리셔 그래서 샘저주당 차트 깔에 가야면도 내가 해서 되니 정도는 도서라 가르선 샘쇼 파르시는 되게 되는데 가르시는 내 다다 라이브에 집지 가르선 유사트 거리스 뭐 도포들 수소 도와들 수소 강아 충충 되니라 되니 아래 강에도 팔로들 나지 다 되는 되니 강에 더마다 더 말했어
So she said she's sharing a story about her experience when she was in retreat, actually, when she was in 3-year retreat in India. When she got to India, she did 3-year retreat and like this, basically it looks like a prison cell. It's like this tiny little house and there's just one tiny little window, you know, that's that you don't, you know, like you're pretty much completely shut in, and it was a really old and it was kind of like moldy, and also there was the paint like on the ceiling it was like old, so it was like constantly, and who knows, it may be bad actually, you know, thinking about, she didn't say that, but like, you know, the paint was like always falling down like a constant drizzle of snow almost, so that even when she had to eat her food, she had to like cover her food like that so that it wouldn't get into her food. And it was so hot. So like if you've ever been in India in the like summer heat, it's like beyond any heat we've experienced here. It's incredible. So it was very hot. It was the summer months, and she was doing prostrations, and they had to do 3,000 prostrations a day. So her knees were bloody, like sore, and her hands were bloody, you know, from there were sores on her knees and hands. She was so hot, and it was, you know, and then there was this issue with the paint constantly. And she just became really sort of depressed, and when she started to cry and was like, I don't think I can do this. This is just like miserable. And then she looked out the little window one time, like she was feeling sad, you know, and she looked out the window, and there was a family, an Indian family, Kuli family, which is like the word for the like Indians who are very, very poor and who kind of do hard labor as their life's labor of like, you know, and have like no money, and it's a very, very hard life. And there was a family, and there was a mother and a father, and with 4 children. And they didn't, like, the children were eating dirt, and they didn't have any shoes, and it was so hot, and there was also like they just had dirty water, and you know, and the mother had to like carry, you know, this dirty water from far away, like, you know, on her head, and like these giant buckets, and there wasn't enough, and you know, she sort of had put her experience into perspective, and you know, like their feet, they were barefoot, and it was so hot that she thought, you know, their feet, the bottoms of their feet must just be like completely burning. And, you know, and the children are like eating dirt like clay because they don't have enough food. And so she thought like, wow, I am doing fine, you know, here I am, I'm like in my own house, and like the sun is not shining directly on me, like I have shade, I have clean water, you know, and I am practicing Dharma, you know. So this experience of seeing their experience put hers into perspective, and then it gave her so much inspiration to keep going and to persevere. And she thought, you know, like my suffering is nothing compared to like what these people are having to go through. And so it made her, like after that, she completely got over her feeling of despair and was inspired and just was able, you know, and went back to her prostrations, and it was like, felt like it wasn't difficult at all after kind of having that experience. It put it into perspective. So she shares that because, you know, sometimes we get discouraged when we're only, like when our view is kind of limited and we're only thinking of our own hardship, our own difficulty, and we don't really have perspective of how fortunate we actually are, and you know how much worse things could be, or how many people have experienced so much more difficulty and hardship. And so when we can put our own difficulty and hardship, no matter how big it is really, into perspective, then there's you know, it can really help in terms of perseverance and feeling less burdened by our own difficulty, because there's also, our mind becomes more expansive, and we're not just in this limited view of me and my hardship and difficulty, but aware of, you know, more aware of, you know, what others are experiencing too. So. That's all.
That branch you machines, then did that, palm la gontan kola, that the conishibana. Jao Karangi, Tank Tadona, Lucia and Moto Penna, Motoka Tama in the way. Then it only showed you about thousand on Moto, Lucia Tate, and it Topana she told you. Then 2000 Paresna. Jiji Mouse in it, the Dodo Jig, Dodo, Yan Pana, Yan Tanka Nashi, Yan Koda Nashi, the Diti Comte Devana, in this Susola, Shibata Chapa, Mars in the Jen where. Then it Jaukaranji, the son of Tang Devan, this is of the Zimbabwe Shane over. And with that, Cordella, Dorji Tom Cordella. 个人去他们这tomorrow 这个吧是的，你们吧，因是些吧，所以是的，起码说，希望那希望嘛一吧，错嘛一吧，起码的了的，起码说，我今天空了有的是，因为但起码说的个是呢，这个错的个是就是我做哪怕这个。Flatro Mampoyore, and the troll the young Kashika Sam, the flatro the Gomashina, the control tower. A control tower, Marie, the Shimatro the Garrison. Pechayana, Mana, Made Putig, she ginger mental corner. Amate, the Putig, Joviachi, the Yakuchi him do that, Sun, the control on the Troyado. 얘는 생각 재활이 뭐 재활 통제를 어디 나지 얘네 뭐다 시진 잡도 들어가서 다고 자데 야시디 야진 시가 잡로르마 제요르데 지긴 주바탄 제 저래 저지
So anyway, she said, you know, she won't get too much into like stories and things, but she just wanted to share that, and then she'll get back to now talking. We kind of like left off in the middle of her starting to go into how to practice the generation stage, or meditating on the yourself as the deity. So when we do the generation stage, when we meditate on ourselves as the deity, we're not having this concept of our bodies as being ordinary or being solid, being like comprised of flesh and blood, but being like the nature of rainbow light. And so when we ordinarily we relate to things as having like being truly existent, and we think of this body as being kind of impure, you know, of flesh and blood, but actually like, so the essence of our form, of our body, is actually primordially that of the enlightened form of the deity. And so the body or the form of the deity is not like ordinary matter. So we don't visualize it like a statue or like a, two-dimensional image, or, like some like heavy kind of, object, but it's clearly appearing, but it is, ephemeral, or it's empty in essence. It's like a rainbow, clearly appearing like a rainbow, but empty in essence. It's like rainbow light. And when we visualize it in this way, this helps to overcome or counteract fixation. So it diminishes the grasping of the mind. And we start to see like our bodies as being kind of empty in essence, not like substantial in nature. And actually that is the nature of all phenomena. All phenomena is, appearance, clearly appearing, yet empty in essence. So we start to regard things with less grasping. And same with the afflictive emotions. So like the afflictive emotions, we get so caught up in them because we endow them with real meaning. We take them to be, really real, to have like real essence to them. And so we get stuck in that affliction. But when we see the empty essence of afflictive emotions, thoughts and emotions, there's no sticking power there. It's like they arise, but then they dissolve into empty space, so that there's no real reality there. There's no nothing to grasp onto. And so in this way, by meditating on the Yidam deity as being like the nature of rainbow light, it helps to diminish that grasping that we have to all phenomena. So when we meditate on, for instance, Vajra Yogini, Vajra Yogini is a semi-wrathful deity. So she's not a peaceful deity, and she's also not a wrathful deity. She's semi-wrathful. And so wrathful deities, we have like lots of wrathful deities. And sometimes when people don't understand what is meant by wrathful deities, there's misunderstanding there. So they think, oh, the wrathful deities are scary or they're angry. But they're not actually angry. The way we can understand, like they are the essence of love. It's just like all the deities. They are the manifestation of bodhicitta. And the way that we can understand or relate to their wrath is like or their wrathful disposition, their appearance is like thinking of a mother, who loves her child with all her heart. And when that child does something that's really bad for them or dangerous, they pick up a knife or a weapon, the mother is going to become extremely wrathful. She's going to yell at her child and, spank her child and grab the weapon out of its hand. But what is motivating that wrath is her love. Because she loves the child. She wants to protect and save the child. And so that's how we can understand that energy of wrath, the wrath of the wrathful deities, is that it's a powerful love. And so in any case, this is, in Vajra Yogini's case, it is, she's semi-wrathful, so not a wrathful manifestation, not a peaceful, but both wrathful and peaceful. And then she has her hair is bound up, so half of her hair is bound up, and then the other half is hanging loose. And so the hair that is bound up represents having transcended like worldly or mundane concerns. And then her hair hanging down, half of it hanging down, represents not forsaking beings, like still also appearing within existence, within the worldly realm to benefit beings. So being free from the two extremes of existence for peace.
아니, 그거는 진심이어레스. 진심때 내 마음 다다 두서는 심지 탐지 산지 정공하는 마타버든 내 마음 다다 두서는 쪽타반 진타반 네바유 손들이 된제된 벤나 저러라 되나다 셔르되나다 라바나 샤린 나시게 되니 공부 집에 이시다 제원네바 그래서요 대개도 되는 진심데 내 마음 다다 두서는 Zikbata, Chintaba, Drintaba, Simjitamje, Kamsanko, Domayoba. De Mount, Dusunk, Yoptaban, Drintaban, the Bayu, the Insan Sungres. Penna, Gerala, the Jungle took a man, yes, a Echanan, Gerala Pelangar. I think that Gerala the Magamashi, Shella Pelangar. Shella Pelang, Penna sheet the Dodo jail, Shalom, Nerjang, Tenso, Tangtogre. Tangtog, Sanjek, Chippy, sheet 7 the Batake. 내 마음 닫아두서는 쟁에 니 심지는 비상지 좀 공부하는 맞았거든요. 그 특히 그 마송자리 취된 냠내전 쪽트는 내바다 시부제와는 내바다서 유선 소식 페리스.
So then she has 3 eyes. So there are her 2 eyes and then an eye in her forehead. And what this represents is being able to see clearly with omniscient wisdom, like being able to understand the into the 3 times of like past, present, and future, and to be able to guide or benefit beings through that omniscient wisdom, that ability to see clearly into the 3 times. So like a crystal, the example is like that of like a crystal that is completely clear. So whatever direction you look at it from, you can see through. It's transparent. Like if you're looking from the south, or you're looking from the north, or the west, or the east, then you can see through. It's like this unobstructed, clear seeing. And so that is what this omniscient wisdom is like, which is pervaded by immense love, the loving wisdom, which has the wisdom to understand how to benefit beings, and the love that is motivating, the motivating impulse to benefit. So to place all sentient beings in the state of liberation, to bring all beings to the state of liberation and awakening, and to be able to have the ability and power to protect and benefit them.
오늘 거는 chewa hiyoris. Chewa hiyode dinin chunsi garesna. Na dini nyumu budu, pompodu, chidagadu, flybudu, dujoden jomsala dinin chewa hiyo. Any kona chani yoris, chani dini tabda, tab shirak, tab ninji chimboda, shirak tongba ninji. Chunzila ani chani yoris.
So she also has 4 fangs, and so these 4 fangs represent the conquering of or overcoming the 4 maras, the 4 demons. The demon or the mara of afflictive emotions, the mara of the aggregates, the mara of what's referred to as the son of the gods, or the mara of complacency and distraction, and the mara of the lord of death. And then she has 2 arms, and her 2 arms represent method and wisdom. So the method of great compassion and the wisdom of emptiness.
Any electrical yoris.
And in her right hand, she holds a drikok, or a curved knife, a curved hook knife.
Teni da dopa jin serjin nonzila teni chogo yoris. Chogo de dopa jin te da ngoso ke sarag draw de dopa jin mare. Teni gaya sina soso jule yu benimon de chate so teni ma juice ke chogo res.
And so the drikok, or the knife, represents the subjugation of harm doers or enemies. And this does not mean outer enemies or harm doers, but the internal harm doers or enemies of the afflictive emotions, the 3 poisons. So subjugating or subduing the 3 poisons of ignorance, attachment, and hatred.
That is all. 하마고나 되니 다 제장도 머생기 따르산 되니야 상하 한냠을라 초간 오늘 나와다 되니 라 곰탄 나와다 되니 younger reason what did you
So she just wanted to, these are some of, actually, there's more in terms of like the symbolic imagery and the meaning, but she wanted to just kind of, because especially when it comes to like wrathful or semi-wrathful deities, there is often misunderstanding, like when you don't have a background or understanding of the symbolic meaning of kind of the imagery, then it can lead to a lot of misunderstanding, both in reading the sadhanas or even just seeing the images. So it's important to have some basis of understanding that, that it's very symbolic, the imagery that we see here.
아니 con 카탕간 제요레스 카탕가테 되니 conga ya perga beba 되니 네 카탕가레.
And then she also has a kadvanga in the crook of her left arm, and that represents the hidden heruka, the hidden consort.
아니 con 매번 요요레스 매번 요야 되니 뭐가 탐지 살와시 발라 되니 니마 코와는 되니 감성 코와를 사와 그 동화를 감성 코와시는 되니 사와 침복 그 동화 나시리 데스바시 발라테니 다와 니마데 사와 그런 지리 되니 다와데 서런 지리 어때지니 되니 공 거울 좀 거울을 못하고 되니 페마스 공 코와는 산제신나자 세인나 코와는 당부지요레 제요레 거울을 못하고 시지 탐제게 동나 되니 contrôle arresena con cover jumpanjan cover luma tampa pemas tampotela o tampada tala tamte saja tinditin lona na ya jeri jeaina korang metotela metok jima ma tampada jima jeayo mare ente pensorande de ko
So she's also surrounded, there's like a ring of fire, and so this fire is primordial wisdom fire, so it represents the burning away or the incineration of ignorance, like burning away the ignorance of samsara, the three realms of samsara. And then there's also, for instance, there's the sun disk and moon disk and the lotus that she's standing upon. So the sun disk represents the wisdom of emptiness, and the moon disk represents the cooling, both compassion of skillful means or compassion, and the cooling of the heat of samsara, or the heat of the afflictive emotion. So often, like the afflictions, the afflicted mind states are likened to like heat or fire, and the soothing or the calming of that heat is like the rays of the moon, or the moonbeams. And then the lotus represents being like not giving up on sentient beings, so not abandoning samsara altogether, but not being stained by the faults of samsara. So that example of the lotus is born, they bloom, they rise up out of like a swampy, muddy, place. They rise up out of the mud, and then they blossom, and they have these petals that the mud just rolls off. It doesn't stick. There's no way to stick to the lotus. And so that's the example of the lotus, is like, all who awaken first are in samsara. We experience samsaric states of existence as sentient beings, and the Buddha, for instance, awakened to enlightenment first, having been a human being in samsara. All of the enlightened beings go from being of samsara to then no longer being stained by the faults of samsara, and also not abandoning samsara altogether, so not giving up on sentient beings, so transcending the extremes of existence and peace, being born, like coming like the lotus that is born of the mud, but is not stained of by the mud.
아니, 다 매번의 요요です. 매번의 요야 되다 가서 뉴모바 똑바로서 이모가 남도 함께 파스가다. 단 니몬그 균자니 미스 시가 세찬 나시게 자니 미스 이 나시게 친구です.
And so again, the ring of fire, the fire represents the clearing away of the fire, or the clearing away or the burning away of the afflictive emotions, so that there's no longer there's the radiance, the great fire is like fully incinerating the delusion of the afflictive emotions.
나무도 랑게 셈데 나무 차라더니 라데 이먹거나시 따빠 띵바미바 동바나시 그러나 하제나 소요레 자오 그람지신 자샤는 모두 따는 돈은 자데 가스마jan테니 모두 셈버선 스미야요 이나히 소소게 되니 도르제 파모데 자오 그람지제 삼노당 아니 디난 따따 송 콜레시요 바제 삼노당 또라 그제지는 모두 지 따따네 자we 마로마 장마송도 다티 디즈고데 페 차이겐 디즈고데 스스로고데 자오 그란지지 디나나 또라테네 자섬 예바데네 콜로지 조데 진콜로 비발론 제콜로 인가 치즈콜로 대어산네 제콜로 데데 콜로지 예바지 산노타 모노테자 검자야스.
So our, it is our mind, we're inwardly, it is with our mind that we're meditating on the illusory form of the deity, being illusory in nature, that it is not permanent, it is not solid, it lacks intrinsic existence, it's empty in essence, but clearly appearing like a rainbow in the sky. So like a rainbow that appears very vivid, you can see, the red, yellow, green, blue, all the colors really distinctly. But if you try to grasp a rainbow, you can't, there's nothing there. There's nothing to hold on to, nothing to grasp. And so this is how we meditate on the enlightened form of the deity. So that's the outer shell of the body is the deity. And then inside is completely hollow, except for the channels and chakras. So the channels are, first, they're the three channels that we have in this image that are represented here. There's the central channel, which is blue, and then left and right channels of the Changma and Roma. And then we have, which are red and white, and then we have, or white and red, and then we have also the chakras. So there's the chakra or the wheel of great bliss at the crown. There's the wheel of enjoyment at the throat. There is the wheel of dharma at the heart, and there is the wheel of emanation at the navel. So in this way, inwardly, we are visualizing the subtle body of the three channels and the four chakras.
냠네 체 더버지 차와나 데니 차자침보다 레파 신데 모토요 데마 타빈나 고 곰잔테 jel라데 곰데든 수수스케 샘신이데 찌그마도 니메데 Ni susu kanga dan susu leka zara da tsama jimba je rode ni susu la chi se rinwa dan da ne nywa cha ro yore mi na shi o jinde da nyamne chenpo chen tobo na tinde chung chung na susu de zo chola na shi cha yo ma res ini de je juzu Kama ni hyusun te 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 gomma dana. La gompa kansala. Kama ni sula deta na de. Yang miso ja. Lura, chunri chunsa. Maje la dunga dong te te song yore. Lura, chunri chunsi. Ha jang lu che sona. Yang je ni kuya dang de nyoba dang de te masar bacha. Yang ha jang chum che sona gu sona. Yang jiu ka nam shi na shi. 쭉 샘나시든 초부 첨부 정선하더니 양삼の 가져 맞아 트레이너 네네 하장 글로벌 마이 하장 그 트럼프 마이 근데 배 선바되더니 뭔 시간하지 르는 서유 가더니 그 강반도 다이너리 수도가 르르 지지 나타 도탄테서라라레 지그 사간의 데마 그 자간의 데 Kare tasara da kamani sona do tanado. Yang miso japsoso ke. Yang lulu yang japinje dila gomden. Tene riba jeda komandon mang do res.
So when we visualize in this way, then there's actually, when we like keep, are in the posture that she mentioned earlier, and the clearer our visualization, then we really let go of grasping to kind of like ordinary phenomena, ordinary existence. And so actually, whatever level of practice that we're at, then this can serve to like the function of the practice at the level that we're at. So for instance, like if we're at a very high level of practice, and we understand Mahamudra, or we have realized the true nature of mind, and we can abide in the recognition of intrinsic awareness, then in doing this type of meditation, this type of practice, that is what it becomes. And even if we're not at that level, it becomes a place to rest our attention, so that then it becomes like the object of our meditative concentration. So we're able to rest our attention on the visualization and identify with the visualization, instead of just following our ordinary proliferating discursive habits. We are able to let go of our hardship and difficulties, let go of kind of the preoccupying ordinary thoughts, and instead to establish single-pointed concentration, on the visualization and the practice, and develop some meditative absorption with that as the object of our meditation. And so no matter what level we're at, by practicing in this way, it's not wasted time. Like it's really valuable time in our and by applying ourselves in this way, it becomes very productive time, like regardless of where we're at on the path. And if, for instance, we have a hard time holding visualization for very long, like maybe we can hold the visualization, really stay present with it for 20-30 minutes. But if we're not able to, maybe even just like 2 or 3 minutes of like concentration at a time, being able to really just let our mind rest with the visualization, staying present with the visualization. And the main thing is that, we're relaxing into the practice, and then applying that focus, intensifying the focus skillfully, so that maybe you're able to hold it for a few minutes, and then the mind sort of becomes distracted, but then you bring the attention back and you're able to hold it, and over time the ability to stay with the visualization becomes stronger and stronger. And she said the main thing is to find the perfect balance between focus and relaxation. So as Machik Labdran famously says, not too tight and not too loose, find the perfect balance. So that means that like when we're too loose, when we're too relaxed, then we maybe fall asleep or we get kind of drowsy. And when we're too rigid or we're striving too hard, we're too tight, then this actually has the effect of intensifying thoughts, like intensifying discursiveness. So then the mind becomes more like a monkey, like we're kind of jumping, thought after following our thoughts. The tendency with tightness is more discursive proliferation. And then on the other hand, if we're too relaxed, then we lose our focus. So we kind of skillfully find that balance between relaxed or loose and focused, or tight and loose, not too tight and not too loose. And so, and if we, again, being comfortable, so, whether we're sitting on the floor or we're sitting in a chair, we have the proper posture, but we're also relaxed in that posture. And then like little by little, we build experience in the practice. It's a gradual process of developing meditative concentration, meditative absorption.
Yeah, 다음은 또 이제 감옥하셔야지.
So now we can, for a few minutes, let's meditate, visualizing, as she explained, to the best of our ability. We can visualize ourselves as whatever deity.
그렇지는
Thank you.
정말 간절히 샤서
So, oh,
발생이야.
she wanted to ask you like for feedback, but then should we take a break first or?
It's all right. Don't come back.
Um, What page is this on? Page 16. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise, where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher.
Thank you. Yes.
So how long? When should we?
15 minutes?
Karma Chula?
20 minutes?
You want
Too
more?
long, but it's okay.
You want much longer?
No, I'm doing it.
He's fine with anything,
5.
so whatever you
Yeah,
guys.
it's fine.
5 o'clock. So 15 minutes?
Yeah, so I guess that would be 3:35.
Yeah. Okay. 3:35.
Deja Sada Samaya Mane Palaya Deja Sada Tenapa Tita Dena Mibava Sada Kayo Mibava Sada Kayo Mibava Anderata Mibava Saraswiti Vipraya Sara Karo Sutame Sita Shire Kreo Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tata Gata Vajana Mizam Pejabama Samaya Sato Dedra Sato Tamaya Manipalaya Beja Sato Tinova Tita Viram Sudakaya Mipava Sudakaya Mipava Narada Mipava Sarva Siddhi Vipraya Sakama Sutame Sisachiriya Pura Ahahavo Bhagavan Sarva Tata Gata Vajramane Veja Veja Pama Samaya Sato 공자 좀 시리라 고미야 도르지 쉬리 다다다 어떻게 자좀 공부해요리 저단계 다 포아 남주 포아 에 양양의 포아 슈값으로 되니 남주는 자 뭐마데 가드리나 지 냠네 지혜율을 대인데 아주 많죠. 포화 탑들이 대인데 아까 오래도 다제당 르라 드니 소소케 아래라레 이제 타마밖에 다 짜도 쉬어는 되니 짜도 쉬어는 가르스나 다 짜고마데 애니 롱도사 짜레스 자 예라 로마 유조데 아니 카르포테 이난도 카르포테 이니 예라
Harbo
카르포테
Changmarebe.
장마테 아니 이 추자 차데 요르스
Got it?
추자
Chuta.
아니 마포테 아니 차자 리데 요르스 남주
So we have this image with the 3 channels. So we might be kind of already familiar with the visualization of the central channel, which is what we do, for instance, when practicing POA. So in that case, you have like mainly you're just visualizing the central channel. And then here we also have the 2 side channels and the 4 chakras. There's the central channel. The central channel is particularly connected with the wind. That is what the wind kind of mainly ultimately enters into the central channel. And on the right, you have the white changma, which is the channel that's connected with the element of water. And on the left, you have the red channel or roma, which is connected with the element of blood. Cha.
Yeah.
Chewed on top.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Chỉ học cái long đồ sa.
And in the middle is wind.
Một số nam chưa có lừa là tin chắc chỉ yêu cảm giác. Ta gom nhầm này chế đấy. Yang nga chỉ là phải gom làm đồng minh đấy. Rồi ta mai xin là thế này cái này rồi cái gì. Một số là gom rồi cáp tăng thế này nhầm này chế đấy cáp tăng. Jiram gom đấy cáp tăng. Thế này zoram 사자 진보 gom đấy cáp tăng. Thế này 그래서 창화대 모두 다 달바다 탐진 진보 뭐 방라. 야, 휴지 주나? 달바산 탐진 집은 거 방로 토지 저저 그요레스. 다때 많이 번지기 그 자와지 제 산모당나 되니 소소라 체rinwa당 내용화 찬도요레스.
So these subtle body practices are the practices of the yogi. They're yogic practices, and they really require a lot of dedication and meditate. So you have to meditate over a long period of time, and then you really start to understand them and have results. And so that's why, it is, if one is really going to do such practices, it requires, really like repetition and consistent meditation, meditating again and again. And the result, is that, so whether we're practicing like generation stage or completion stage, so the generation stage being these visualization practices that involve like meditating on ourselves as a Yidam deity, completion stage practices, which that with characteristics actually involves these subtle body practices, but then also that there's the practice, for instance, of Mahamudra and Dzogchen. And these should, like, they all ultimately have the result of progressing towards enlightenment, liberation from suffering, liberation from samsara, and attaining the state of Buddhahood, or really, awakening. So that is the transcendent result. But even on a worldly level, on a mundane level, they have the effects of extending lifespan, or increasing longevity, and diminishing illness or healing. They have a healing effect.
Trenti namju semjin ne lok shibate ani chaja chimbor la nandra zoba chimbor de nandra vema chimbor de nandes.
So understanding or recognizing the true nature of the mind, or the essence of awareness, is what we refer to as Mahamudra. It is the same thing we refer to when we say Dzogchen. It's also what is meant by Madhyamaka. So all three, Madhyamaka, Dzogchen, Mahamudra, are essentially pointing to realizing the true nature of mind.
다다 주동은 자다 롱티를 마셔 감서 대 주동 린다도 주동은 르진네 시바레 신도드나
And then the practice of the subtle body practices, practicing, in the 6 yogas of Naropa, the channels, winds, and drops, leads to, has to do with realizing the true nature of phenomena, realizing the true nature of the body.
아니 다디나나 가레스 소요르시나 당보 영업은내로 해봐라 니데스 르업은내로 생업은내로 업은내로 르 자이내로 틀레내로 다 디제나니 유바나니 당보데 데니 르업은내로레스
So there's the true nature of the body, the nature of the channels, the nature of the wind, the nature of the drops. So first there is the nature of the body.
르업은내로데 가레스나 뭐저 세나 르적 당시에 연거르스 부차당나시 부차당 부 아마르가르 쇼그르 부차 아마르 부차 대차당 당 어떤 얘기 밖에 있었나
So first we have to think about it in terms of, the physical body and how beings come into existence through conception, in the womb of the mother.
아니 됐어 다 지어게 받쳐자야레스
And so when so first we have to understand kind of the obscured experience of the physical form or body. And so through these practices, there is also the potential to purify the obscuration of birth.
지와 마마 폰캄지지다 다다다 대상하 그냥에 참아 바고 나와야지 되니 퐁보 당 감다도 김치 퐁보 감데 아니 산 조스바 스바다 스마레스 아니 퐁캄지 퐁보 감데 아니 파워
공다처럼 공복함 라사와레. So 장축 semba garere.
퐁보 감데 산조 스바다 스마레스 김치데 아니 저다 초모레스 한 모조 가레스는 미바데라 요반진 거 요말은 소라라 소라 르데라 니 시초 담바레 레기아 참유르라 나그레
So it is said that actually, so from the perspective of secret mantra, or Vajrayana, we transform our perception into one of pure perception, where we start to see the intrinsic purity of all phenomena. And so that extends to the body, that what we ordinarily experience as ordinary, body is actually pure in essence. So it is said that the aggregates and elements and ayatanas are all actually deities. So for instance, the aggregates and elements are the female and male and female Buddha bodhisattvas, the bodhisattvas and bodhisattvas, and the ayatanas or sense sources are the male and female wrathful deities. So actually, in the mandala of our body, the all of the peaceful and wrathful deities, the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities are complete.
아니 때 집지 다스바스마라 되네 이시단 제바 근데 우살 똥반이라 우벌 산초바 네 우살 똥반이라 방법 못올라 아래서나 부차가서라 똥반이 가야요 말에 아니 우벌 산초바 다 장초바라야 돼 그거 가르치나 또자 요디 Kondu chupa. Sinandra, Malabalam Sinandra, Indiri. Any chop lade, Panza, Rama Tada Tanje Panshin, Tada Tanje Dane, any Changatella, Chan chops. Adela Chancho, Chancho Maboy, Chancho Maboy in the Posa, or the Dodade Taranges.
So, so what we have when we arise in the enlightened form of the deity, there are these different stages of arising, like these different stages of the visualization. So, so for instance, and there are different numbers of arising. So there's one that is like the most common is 5. There are 5 stages in the process of like the birthing of the arising of the deity. And those are called the 5 kind of, it's very hard to translate actually, because the literal word is enlightenment or awakening, Changchupa. And so they're like the 5 enlightening arisings. Yeah, there are different ways that they're translated. And so the first one is like the ground or the base is being clear light, luminosity, or emptiness. So that's the first, is like the emptiness. And so this word, Yangchupa, which we translate actually as awakening or enlightening, is the compound word in Tibetan. Jang means like purified, having fully purified, and chup means kind of becoming fully developed. So the obscuration aspect is fully purified, and the enlightened aspect or the enlightening qualities are become fully developed. So the chupa part referring to, we have the 5 paths, and there's like the final, the path of no more learning, and the Jang part, which is referring to the purification of all defilements or total purification. So it's important to like understand that when we say like something we say in English, which is just like awakening or enlightenment, in Tibetan has these 2 aspects, these 2 qualities of purification and full development, or like the purification of obscuration and the full development or realization of qualities.
And it mying at the Kata Karmaji Vusi Dinim Nidale Sanchobas. Tam Pake Dinida de Galet Chadishina, Katasina, da Hagora, Margaret Chatang, Pake Tilini da Garesina. A little tanche and Wera, little tan the Siendi, Dan Nimate, Harpo into Market, the Chad Sunquere, Davate, and the Pake Tillet.
So, so this first, there's the like, and these 5 enlightening factors or arisings, they correspond with the birth process. So when there is kind of the purification that occurs through the generation stage of these 5 stages of arising, then what happens is the birth process becomes purified. So first, corresponding with the empty space of the mother's womb is the first arising, which is that of emptiness, which you just said. And then you have the second one, which is the arising of the sun and the moon. And this corresponds with the coming together of the male and female essences at the time of conception. So there's the like seminal essence of the father, the white drop, and the blood essence of the mother, which is the red drop. These correspond with the seats of sun and moon. So sun being, kind of red in its essence, is the wisdom aspect, or the mother that corresponds with the blood element of the mother, and the moon corresponds with the seminal essence of the father, being white in color. So there's the arising of the sun and moon disk seeds is the second stage, and this purifies that moment of conception.
다 감 거타된 지네 쇼 차르나지 차안데 차네드니 다 봄신 기바 차와 남바지 다사 당고들라 에르손 도르디나시 차르 기바 차오지야 고든데 도르디나시 차안데 드니 데라 라바 당감바 찬치 차당 라바 감바트 소가칼레 야 도용 그레스.
So then the next stage is the arising of the hand implement, because that's how we say. But what that's referring to is like, the kind of like hand implement very often is like the Vajra, right? This is a Vajra. And that corresponds with like once in the birth process, there's been conception, and then there's the development of the fetus. And there's this stage where the fetus becomes kind of like the head becomes very bulbous, and then like the round part of the lower part of the body also becomes kind of bulbous, and in the middle it's a little bit thinner. And like fetus kind of looks like a Vajra, at that stage. And so that is the arising of the hand implement, which is like the Vajra. And when we are visualizing the generation stage, we're visualizing the Vajra, and that purifies that like fetal development stage of the fetus.
Then Lu Yong's thought, Lu Yong's thought, Lu Chang, Drop Chang, that is Matia. Chabon, then Lu Yong's thought, Jeva Yong's Drop, Open Umpar Sanjibata, Jeva Yong, Jeva Sin Sergiak, Mutuka Penna, Sergiak, Laura. Yeah, then Uber Sancho Pares.
And then we have like the full, like then the fetus like fully develops into, fully healthy and like fully formed fetus with the hands and the, arms and hands and the different limbs. And so that corresponds with then the full arising of the entire form of the deity. So then when we, go from like hand implement to then like the full arising of the deity's form with all of the different attributes of the deity's form, and this corresponds with or purifies like that full development, just prior to and during the birth process.
Then, Karesna, Gonda check listen Pama Kota Jin, Maro Nabaji, Song Yunju Sancho Bas, Tambo, Maro Nabaji Nanji. The Song Yunju Sancho Bas.
So the Chaksingi moon ladder, right?
Yeah.
So sorry, we missed one stage, which is the arising of the seed syllable. So that's just actually prior to the arising of the hand implement. And usually like when we visualize the Vajra, it's also marked in the center with the seed syllable. So the seed syllable comes first, which is like so you have the sun and the moon, which is the father and mother drops, and they kind of come together, and then there's kind of like a clot of, what do we say, like a zygote or something? I don't know, before the fetal development, there's just a clump. And that clump has kind of like this shape of a seed syllable. So we have in, Tibetan Buddhism, we have all these seed syllables like the hung and the hri and so forth. And so that corresponds with that first kind of development just after conception of the entity that is like, the being before it develops into a fetus, which corresponds with the Vajra.
Then Lu Yong's Drop Savage Yoga, then Dawa Juni Tango took a dinner and carriage, then Dawa Juni, so 부박 쯔당 다와 그 샤제라 그래. 아 가레나 다와 쩌이나 루제나 얘네 거 영수 잡아들라. 얘네 저는 드버거 아무도 참 하고서는 모두 드버거리도스.
So then, through that period where the child is like growing and developing in the mother's womb, up to birth. So like there's some differences culturally about like what amount of time that is, whether it's 9 months or 10 months, or sometimes even maybe 11 months. There's this full period of development, and then the child is born. And that child being born, or like being born as a human being, corresponds with the Nirmanakaya form. So that is actually like all beings are essentially Nirmanakaya appearances, and their purified essence.
자, 르데 저땅도 너드 대신에 다 제발 르 저땅도 시 가스 시고야 그 삼노로 뜻이나 바코다지는 제네 셰셰바 요레스
The Garelu Driptang. So there's more like explanation. There's a lot of details regarding this, and like the way, what the various like kind of obscurations of the physical form are, that are explained in Gampopa's jewel ornament of liberation.
예바르시나 르라 짜 사야 쪽쪽 짜섬 요래 손도
Saya Drupju.
짜섬
So, and then there's also kind of like the different details regarding the kind of obscurations of the channels. So the body, it is said that actually there's a whole network of subtle channels that pervade the body. In fact, altogether, there are said to be 63 million channels that go through the whole body.
Duna chaduna seva cha si den yeyoris
Got it?
seva sina ya dong che seva saya de yora seva de himi tata chiran ke te shison
No, yeah, it's
chiran ko
the chewa le mama re samso mare. Yeah.
duna ambo de saya rido
Mm-hmm.
du sona seva cha si den ye nyomari mari
China, to get it right. So she's saying like an obscure number. I don't know how to translate it. So I think it's like not even a number that we exactly have in English. Like it's not because down from 1 million we have like maybe hundreds of 100,000, right? Is this? No, it's not. It's bigger than thousands. Boom choose chewa. Okay, now I know. So it's 100 boom chu 10 100,000s is how much is that? That's
100,000.
like 10 of 100,000. That's a million. So I said million. So
63 million.
63 million.
Right.
Not so tinda di boom chu saya orang la gare. So it's a little bit confusing. Because the word that they say for million is actually
Just write down those zeros.
yeah, beniti chirang yigi trina. Yeah. They not go to boom chu. Yeah. So later we'll look into it, yeah,
Okay.
because it's kind of a waste of time.
무슨 발생을 딱.
Yeah.
There's a high math way.
Yeah,
아니, 내 양자.
but they have a word, like a different word, like we do for, like we say million, right? But they have a category that's underneath a million, that's not a million yet, but.
세와시, 세와차, 시여대 양 두손나, 저 두손이나, 온차 둔주 자비요레스, 다
Dunchu, Tongtak Dunchu Dunji.
의지.
So, okay, so whatever this number is that I'm not getting, that's when you take that 63 million and you subsume it, then it becomes this number that I'm not clear on. And then if you further subsume that, then it becomes 74,000. So the channels can be subsumed into a network of 74,000.
대 저 두손이나, 아니, 되나 홀로. 좁제당, 잔다 제단 좁제요레스,
Korlo J Dang
홀로 좁제,
Ochokje.
당, 잔다 제단 좁제요레스. 다 산제라고 마테 코레를 지자도 사요 말데 공 개발아 상마 그것도 지자도 컴퓨터 요 말에 상마 소리요레스.
So then, you further subsume these into 18 chakras and 108 petals.
이 드스나 아니 콜로가 산다 제단 합정 아니요레스.
Jadang Namchumani. And then if you further subdue those, then it becomes 5 chakras with and 152 petals, or I think like main branches, kind of.
다들이 진발롬 주좀 마드여다네. 드셔는 또 삼아. 진발롬 주 콜로라 로르니. 진발롬 주좀 콜로라 포가 주도 뉴트르제네 가라. 아 진발롬 주 콜로라 진발롬 상코리에 되게 가르. 한 뉴트르제 말람 용세리샤. 뉴트르 말람 신타 말람 지네데. 소소 그 말람 무엇이바. 이제 정세 정말 정세데 지발로 좀 콜. 또 레지지데 말람 그 레지지 지발이다.
And so, tiniti so dampo tinati korlo nga nangla tiniti
정말 드네 맞제 현지사. 다때와 조금 콜라.
They love chogre, yang de dampo tinati timba long chu korlo de dampo. Dampo la.
된저 제말은 다 누가 진짜 싸데 마셰시네 살. 간신나. 다 소소 그 남절 벌르라. 누가 진짜 싸. 마늘 빨개도 되는데 다 소고 손 요레스.
So then these channels can all be really kind of like the most kind of powerful channels, or the channels that are kind of in which are the main 3 channels of the 3 main channels. But then she also said something and then said she was gonna not go in this direction, but it's interesting, so I couldn't say.
저랑 그 말게 데르데드니 도다 먹어서 대장에 데르드.
Mare di longchu korlo te ipe yapo or what?
자 그런 거 삼아. 말이 네바진 자 그런 자 도도 말라신 것도. 자 마드 데르도도.
Yeah.
이제 그런 속에 남주는 검자고 말이 이네 이제 요래라 말. 근데 다 상원에 검자. 자데 네바진 다 남절 벌르라. 네바진 자데. 아니 자 뭐마더로 맞장 선데스.
So anyway, I think she decided she wasn't going to get into like too much like description involving the different channels and the different chakras, but she did say something about how like for instance the chakra that's at the the throat, which is or actually, no, maybe, no.
자, 로마 장마송.
Yeah, so anyway, she's now going into like, there's the 3 chakras. So we have mainly for those who do these yogic practices, then we have the 3, like the main focus is on the 3 of the central channel and the left and right side channels of the Changma and the Roma.
아니, 자, 장마라데 가르치나 제도건 자 사야만 보여리.
But it's important to know that if we think about like the full network of channels that pervade the entire body, that there are like, millions of these channels.
오케이. 근데 다 long 다 long 되게 뭐만한데 long 마더 갑살 아무 저게 남주라 그래. 뭐또 카에 long 근데 장마 그 long 레스. 이 now the long 아니 이시 그 long 레스. 당초 다 띵에 라레 곰 잡던 데데 세르만 로리 라야데 김치 가르시나. 근데 수수 럭선 초선 때는 참나 때가 근데 이 시기에 롱데 망 로여래. 이 시기에 롱데 망을 로나 근데 소소 체를 왔다. 네 들려줘요. 다 가나는 롱 유야데 되니 가르스나 유야데 되니 내장 아니 배나 배차야게나 뭐저 컨트롤랑 값을 칸은 롱데 망보 로여래. 아니 복통통 저 베스 컨트롤해야 되니 샘능한다 그 가서 되니 복통통 샘능한다 그 되니 컨트롤랑 산노마 보고 되니 샘 롱데만 보여야 되는데 세 통을 보여야
So now we have the winds that move through these channels, these subtle body channels, and they're kind of like there's a distinction between like there's the coarse winds, which is like the coarse, like the breath, that we breathe that comes out in and out of our lungs or that we breathe through our mouth or our nose. And then there are the internal winds. And the internal winds are like the awareness, the wisdom winds, the primordial wisdom winds. And when we practice for a long time, like so she said, for instance, in doing 3-year retreat, then what happens is that the coarse winds kind of become really sort of slow down and they become fewer, like one breathes less, and one resides more with the internal winds. And so what happens is that there's a shift from the coarse winds, which are connected more with like delusive states of mind, delusion and afflictive emotion, and instead there becomes a predominance of the wisdom winds. And this is what actually leads to awakening, enlightenment, and it also has the effect of prolonging lifespan and increasing health. And so when we can see, for instance, when there is an affliction, like if we become angry, then notice that the breathing becomes labored. One breathes more heavily, right? There's more breath that as one breathes more quickly. So there's more coarse wind or breath that comes in and out of the mouth. And same with other afflictions, desire and fear, for instance. And the more kind of pacified that the mind becomes, then the more kind of the breathing slows down, and the breath becomes more subtle. And this is also kind of indicative of this difference between the coarse winds and the internal wisdom winds.
아니 자데 가르치는 자데 소단 가르치는 뭐마테 되니 대원이야 지호를 제인데 되니 자데 이르지 소요래 간들라고 다 된제 다 잡로니야 나르나 이제 나오냐야 로마다 장만이 되니야 소요래
And so we can visualize, just as it is here in this image, this central channel runs from like a point that's like 4 finger widths below the navel, up to the crown. And these 2 side channels run parallel. They hook into the central channel at that bottom, at that point 4 finger widths below the navel. And they run parallel to the central channel, and they kind of come up like on the outside of the brain and hook, like bend down, and the opening of the 2 side channels is with the 2 nostrils. So you can see kind of in the diagram how it is.
So the opening of which channels are there?
The 2 side channels.
The side channels.
Yeah. Yeah, like this.
And it, 자,
To the brain.
They go around the brain. Yeah.
자, 마감을 값살았더니, dollar, 라, 자산들 요소녀래.
That.
자, 마감 값을 써서 살아. 아니, 그런 걸 럭주란 하고 좀 럭주만하시, 동발란 하고 말해. 이네야. 하고선 럭주만 나시, 나나 디세든 조미죠. 럭주만 나 슬퍼. 나나 단 럭주만 이는 나나티 조여라. 소바 미죠. 슬퍼 나시다. 럭주 pen 표정라 빼야냐. 표정 슬퍼 된데 나시더니 슬퍼지. 자 남절벌려라더니 자 마공까지 슬퍼지 요레스. 자 공부가서라더니 자바마로마 장마든데 냐소.
So this is another difficult one, a little bit to translate. She's saying something about it being like the intestines of a sheep. The loki juma gare the sarang majang like in the
냠리 마제 값서 아니 로주가 지마나시 로주 지마다 퍼자샤나시 요레스 자자레.
the
Yeah.
machine.
야.
So like, for instance, when we haven't practiced, like we haven't purified the channels through practice, then the channels are like sheep intestine filled with air. The
표정라 표정나
Mhm.
표정 슬퍼지
So there's this-
표정은 뭐야 로도 이 표정은 퍼마전 퍼잡잡찬오래 마 퍼지하면은 간데 요래 뭐요 말아.
So there's like this yellow thing in a sheep's intestine, which I'm not sure what that is, but like when there's air in it, it kind of like, I think it becomes like full, and then otherwise it's like flat. So I think what she's saying is the nyamni chena dene yojo nangshin.
냠리 제와했나? 자 갈포 말포
So if you practice, then it's like this, like white, red, and blue, like the 3 channels. And without the practice, then it's like this yellow thing in the sheep's intestines that is,
yellow and yes.
I think so. I think that's the point. Well, that's what sometimes it sounds like it's deflated, and then sometimes they're full, I think. But niti yo panangshin, chang panangshin, really.
나는 로규 지말 퍼달리나 시리 나는 난 동바 많이 봐. 야 저기도 나는 이 커피 통지 지구요.
So for instance, there's like a straw. So it's like a straw, like round, like a straw.
어떤데 요레스. 일단 먼저 사솜데 장데 한국소디 특례서 요래. 하여튼 특례직 공부를 이 올라 또 뭐냐면 제거를 다제 제한테 값으로 그 특례스니데 버게 карпотер이 또 뭐시는 마포데 어머게 차리 이 이나ян다 시비 값으로 되니 특례제 만로 차데 양로 되는 고건절네 되니 셔르레스
the.
지금은 이래 되는 거 그거라
Mhm.
이 바로든.
So then there's the drops, the essences or the bindus. And so we have like these three channels, and then we have the winds, right? And so they're the winds that move through the channels. And I think that was what she was getting at with the, I don't know, there was something that was missed there with the sheep intestine thing. But in any case, we have the winds, and then we have the drops or the essences. And there's the white drop of the father, which normally resides like at the kind of forehead level, and the red drop of the mother, which is at the navel. And so, for instance, when we practice Tumo, this is like connected with, or the inner practice of inner heat, this is connected with the mother drop. And then there's also different practices that involve also moving the father drop and sort of moving the different drops, the essences throughout the channels. And when they normally also sort of reside in their places, and then at the time of death, they move towards one another and kind of collapse into one another. And there's like the consciousness in between, and that's the fainting away that happens at the moment of death.
저 한가르 보세드네 되글래들라 그나마 저올라야 돼 가지게 되네라 그도 저 신여든 나코거를 한도 제 땅에다 포화장 가서야 되는 산에 되나라 되나래 다다 되글래장 가서라 되네 뭐도나 짜 든다지 요래라 든다는 디나시도 좀 디올라더니 짜데 하장게 깔고 많이 봐. 하장게 나빠 많이 봤더니 제마요 제마 하고요. 제마도 보고 나시 충분히 깔던 설와스 깔고 하장 깔고 많이 봤지. 우르 깔고이 깔장 많이 빠질라 될라고 나게 빠지. 니데나 곰다 틀레냐니
So sometimes when we, in the practice of the drops, then what is visualized is an white inverted hung syllable at the crown. So it's like an upside down white hung with like the point kind of dripping at the bottom, the top of the hung. And in general, also this sort of point or top of that channel has it's a very, very fine or thin, kind of like has the shape of like a kind of three-pointed tube, like a triangular tube. And there's a tiny sort of the essence or drop there, which is like the size of a very small like pea or lentil, and it's not extremely white, but also not like, it's white but not super bright. It's like a kind of a soft glowing white, and that is the white drop.
저 남바 깔고 대화 지지게 뭐 취직거 대화 지지게 주거 상호 되는 짐바 엄제 남바 말보 되는 대 우서 지지 다 서와라는 우서 뭐도게 물람 우서 되어라 다 서와 지지고 우서게 지지게 되는 롱그 상호 닌가글라더니 홍제는 남바 홍고 나도 지지시 대설 나도
라인데.
예 나도 지지시거든요 주거가 상호 대화 안지나바 말보 대루 지지지 되니 저버가 상호 진들이다 대화 신이다 나중에 거는 게 시와나지게 되니 너무 단 주로는 떠모시냐래 이니 조пол을 줘 말아 강아 정도는 되니 떠모냐래 진다 배 남시 정모 쉬지 차도는 지나는 레가 포제 Tsa Lung cho trao mo de chen ya gong su ma lo ba pa le ya cao jin cha ro ya de de jin ya me jia ya o de de ge na res
And so, so there's the wheel of great bliss at the crown, which is, you know, where that Father Essence drop is residing. And it is the Diniti Dewa Chingi. So it's that drop is itself the essence of great bliss. And it's the seed of the bliss of Dharmakaya. And then at the throat is a red Om syllable. And so this has the nature of clear light or luminosity. It is also particularly connected with the clear light luminosity of the sleep state and dream yoga. So this is, you know, resides at the throat, which is the wheel of enjoyment, the Sambhoga Kaya chakra or the Sambhoga chakra, and so it is like the seed of the Sambhoga Kaya. And then at the heart level, you have the Hum, which is the Ningala Hum Wombore Kado.
you got la hong hong bo de
With the Hum, which is blue in color, which is connected with the meditative experience of non-thought. So, and like there's particularly, you know, the meditative experiences of bliss, clarity, and non-thought. So this is particularly connected with non-thought and also the non-thought of Dharmakaya, the concept-free Dharmakaya. And then at the navel is the syllable at the wheel of emanation, the chakra of emanation. And so this is also the point, you know, that is where we practice Tumo. So this is, you know, for instance, with the practice of Tumo and the 6 yogas, by focusing at this point below the navel, then we develop some inner heat, the warmth, which it actually generates bliss, like very strong bliss and very strong warmth that then has this pervasive effect physically, where even if it's very, very cold, then you can like heat your body through this practice of inner heat or tumo. So for instance, a lot of yogis will do this thing where they, you know, it's freezing cold and they have just one white cloth. And even if like that cloth gets dipped in like, you know, ice cold water, and then they put that cloth on, they can dry the cloth in freezing temperatures with the heat of their body from the heat that's generated in tumo, the blissful heat that's generated.
da lo za tan jie yo re
Parijini.
to ta mo te zhen yan me ji ta mo yan me ji ga de pe jie gu da ya pencil de ji ya
Pencil?
you
Pen you.
up so que
So now we're going to practice a little tumo.
long jie ma gang bo so que zo bo de nen ja o ko ran xi la dor jin nam jer ma ke do je sam ma tang zo de ne ku jen cha lo de cha pa le de ne za som ye ba je sam ma tang de ne long ya kanang ke long ma ye ba no ne long chu chu ji yang ge kanang ni long ma ye ba no ne ji ka de ma de ne ta Tsa son de wema da roma chama tin tsa son de ma drone ta deva o sorge la gore sorge o te tampola gente
So first of all, like again, meditating on yourselves in the form of the Yidam deity, like your body is the nature of light, like the nature of rainbow light, empty in essence, appearing in the form of the Yidam. And you have the 3 channels, you know, running through your hollow body, in the form as you're appearing in the form of Vajrayogini. And as you breathe, you're breathing through like kind of in little sips through your nose. So you're not like breathing, taking breaths through the mouth, but just like gently breathing through the nose and bringing kind of the energy of that wind down through the side channels. And then to that point that is like 4 finger widths below the navel, that point where the 2 side channels enter into the central channel.
에 당볼라 대화 오 소리야라 되니 한거 소리 대도 요래 간드르스나 인드도
And so then in
한거 되나
very
남주 요래
small,
가르스나 바지르 도르제 파몰라 디 쮸코리와 쮸코르테르 tuk섬 요래 이때 뭐또 그 수송은지 더그 말이거든 대화 오로 뭐더라 디 당마 말차거라기 아통 요래 다데 디 대화 오 소리야데 디 다다 짜송 근들도 대 짜송 근들도 다서나 되나 말더니 매 총총 말포지 사오 임바데 예르드네 총총 지 되는 어떻게 롱데마 잠롱어 쳔볼롱 쳔볼망아 양롱 더마송나 양 갈래 노나 파탄 야야저 당는 잠롱 되니 때올라 잠롱선 메과데 되니 가르스나 메들든 어딘데 되니 롱데 망아 버캅슬랑 어떻게 내가 퍼져 저도 흉전 로도 어디 나시게 되니 롱데 되니 망아 되니 버캅슬 고차볼 지유선 되지 선어당 메과 곰스
so at that, so there's the place, there's like a little space in the bottom of the central channel where the 2 side channels have entered. And then there's like a tiny little triangle that's kind of like she was pointing to, like the tip of her ballpoint pen.
Very
It's
small.
like that shape, very, very small. And actually she said that's naturally there. It's like the, we have the Dharmadaya of Vajrayogini, which is the mandala of Vajrayogini. And so there's like one part of that 6-pointed Dharmadaya is a single triangle, which is kind of naturally resides there as the short, what's referred to as like the short ah. And it has, or actually the half ah is maybe a better way to say it. And because it's the shape of an upside down half ah in Tibetan, or half of an ah. And it is the nature of fire, like there's a tiny little ember, at the tip of that triangle, which is itself the nature of fire. And as we breathe in through the side channels, we're kind of gently holding the winds there below the navel. This is what is referred to as a gentle face breath. And so we're not holding it with any force, but just very gently, there's some energy that's collecting there beneath the navel, for like 4 finger widths beneath the navel. And so we're holding the energy there. And as we breathe in through the side channels, the winds go down and then they enter into that nook, that space where the small triangle of fire resides. And it's like feeding that fire. It's causing it to glow stronger. Just like if you have like an ember and then you blow on that ember and it brightens, it glows, it strengthens the fire. And so that's what's happening as we breathe in, and the wind enters at that point and sort of causes the fire to intensify, and it becomes gradually like stronger and stronger as we visualize in this way, the glow from the ember, the heat, and the bliss.
이때와 올라드는 말 싹좀 눈도다 쌀 니데 들려져 반도다 들려지네 다자고만 되는 딘도도나
So there's like this, she shows, where these 2 side channels are entering, they're like hooking into the central channel. And there's kind of like a little triangular space in there, tiny little space. And that is where that flame is residing. So now we can practice a little bit.
Is the flame the same as the red dot?
Oh, well, we were calling it the red drop, yeah. Tiniti connectively marble down May the chiparore.
말해
No, not the same. Yeah.
텔레 마포데 마게 차리
Mhm.
텔레도 마포데 메데 마게 차아 데니 깔포데 파크 텔레리 다다 데 또뭐냐니 제 가서 다다 아도양 마를 망에 땅그리 다다 상마시에서는 그냥 조야
So it gets confusing, so you don't need to think, because there's a connection there, because there is, like, we were talking about the red drop, like the mother drop, which kind of resides there naturally. And then the father drop, which resides, is the white drop, which resides at the forehead. But so now we can think of Tumo as being separate from that. There is a connection, but she doesn't want to get too much into it because it gets confusing, like, so to not, we can kind of mix it up if she says too much. So, in any case, you can just think of it as being separate for right now.
아무튼 다다 이 때와 올라 설전 사는데 마찬매 춘춘 제유아더니 삼다 롱 된잠로야 뭐네 롱대야 마탄 나오는 마타 야자야 뉴뉴 제야티 이제야니
So in any case, so we can just meditate for a little bit, just focusing on that tiny flame at that point 4 finger widths below the navel. And like, breathing in, holding the energy there with a gentle vase breath, or just like gently holding the winds below the navel. And then as we breathe in, imagining, that those, as the winds enter the side channel and then enter, or come down through the side channels, enter into the central channel, it causes that flame to glow stronger. So we can just meditate, kind of gently focusing in this way.
Kanda Johnson sa Mapa.
So, she would like
They
to
do your
hear,
petition.
she would like to hear from you, like what your experience was, if any of you, have anything you would like to share.
That the Nyamne Chiti Kapsala Namjuna Pe Gunkain the Yakan Nyamne Chiba Re Kahotap the mother thought Concho Maris.
So when you do this practice, you know, whether it's winter, whether it's summer, you are only allowed to wear a very thin white cotton shawl and nothing else.
Talo Tanya log paper Poyo Tani Yinchi Minatri Karesana Re Kapoticon Degoris.
So like day and night, you're not allowed to have any heat sources like fire or heating or you know, like sheepskins or anything to warm yourself with, just the white thin cloth. Huh?
Sheepskin.
Yeah, no sheepskin.
Chesi.
Dini luki papa concho mare.
Mare.
Mhm. Like any skins,
Re kapote,
any like warm like furs or anything you're not allowed to have.
Chizu Kadi Tugudu.
Chizu ngapa.
Nada Kasiri.
Ga chizu ngapa zimba kama chunga.
Kamachung. Any
Dini chirang kongso la kechaki yura gande jungsong kechaki yura.
yeah.
So you were gonna respond to her question, yeah.
Oh, I guess I was gonna ask, what role does the exhale, the out breath have in this process? You know, you have the inhale.
Dini de kana no to dini de long de yang de ne la tesa te yura yaru. Ini yang pang do gari chaki yore.
Found the Koran automatic Taya Mato. Tesan no Tango Maris. Kata make Karesan Mikato Teko Nera Takora.
So you're really keeping your focus just on like the ember, you know, below the navel, and you're not thinking about the exhale. You're just exhaling naturally, but there's no.
That's during the inhale.
Yeah, you're thinking of the inhale kind of feeding the warmth of the ember below the navel, but you're not. And then you're just breathing naturally. So your exhale is just natural, but there's no thought about like what's happening there. Yeah, you're just keeping your focus on the fire below the navel.
So Tango Tele Mecho, San Mapanda, Matana, Karesan Chuncho Tango. Muto Teni Nechimbote Tango the Gomya Boko Maris. Tango Chuncho.
So and it's very.
Chir Tayaris.
It's very, very small. You're starting off very, very small, very subtle, this very small ember. And then gradually it kind of like glows brighter and brighter. It gets bigger and bigger, but you don't start off big. Otherwise it becomes difficult actually to generate warmth. So it's important to start very small. And this is a practice that you do over a long period of time. Like you can't expect to immediately get it. It takes time and cultivation.
Just an example of just what happened.
Oh yeah.
That I noticed that my imagination got very activated. Like I couldn't conceptually tell you exactly what I saw, but a lot of imagination. And then I noticed that the two channels were very far apart. And I've been having a lot of health problems. I don't know if it's connected, but they wouldn't really come together. At the Tigre.
Tene de chi gande jungsong la yorwa tene komina gombe kala tene nama ramata shagi yore. Tene yang di tena gare shagi hana tente la tu kumendo ini yang be gare la kogre tesa mambo shagi yore. Tene kong yang di source de changma dam roma di ni barda di barnang mambo do tes tarin boda wacha yore. Tene kongi sambala chikai chitenda dawa yana kong yang ding sang di Nata tese yore, dini yang di zupo shida tambo yo mare, di dang dawa yona samsong, di kain sine di yang tata, di tsa uma namla jukma tupa nangshi.
일단 타타 요소는 저기 요리 첨부 요소는 가르치는 소소 그 동라라는 오늘 그 루샤자 그런 시 많이 번도 공부여라 근데 코로나 나타오나 되고 피도 빼요 아이스 나타때 유나 그냥 나타때 삼는 코드는 강에 치는 거라 아니 소소 견자오 그런 시 동라제 공소는 소소는 나타라 피해 봐 아니 소소 견진바데 셴로 나스네 nga nasa te samdeya te ta jimba jina te ten jimba ka shenro te rang ke te parola jimbo yusan na chang re chung yusan na te cheba yomare.
So she said, actually, as far as the space, and distance between the channels, like it doesn't really matter so much, like, because it's a visualization, right? So like sometimes if we think of them as being kind of narrow and close to each other, that's okay. Or we think of them as being big or small, or like there's some flexibility there. She said, but as far as your health problems, she thinks that this can really benefit because you're focusing inwardly on the subtle body, and you're in like an empty, this visualization is like empty in essence, right? And so it's helping to diminish attachment to our form as ordinary and like the ordinary systems of the body, and we're instead identifying with our body as being like the nature of rainbow light, and so an empty in essence, and that's helping to counteract the grasping, the fixation. And it also gives you a focus that then allows you to let go of or forget your health problems. And then, so this process of like this kind of meditation really can help with health issues. And in general, yeah, like how the details of how we visualize it big or small or distance, a lot of distance between or close, or sort of narrow, it doesn't matter so much. The main thing is just to sort of stay with what we're trying to visualize.
We do that and then we resolve it. Where do we go with this?
Tani tinra che, tani di kamala yang di kana tinrim mixel chikcheya yorebe gandhi che. There's no particular dissolution or anything.
Atela pe beju mangpo tonya yores kansina ta sosola namjuina chune mayengpa halazuna sana tongna nyara kapsula che tamok ke nyamne che ambo chung je tene tsachen tanji pa me ba ne soso me hongna tindre ji xiao na che ko gomya yore te gom te tene gomya po posona tene chama ka re te sa ni yo ma ne na hi chang ka se te bu ni tindre na te chinyo mi da soso zin la ya yo ma ra na ja la nyamne che ja ni ko cho chamo yo ma ya chana ya na ma te chang ga ma bu ni na ta tang ga gu ni lo ta kon ro re ani go ka nga chung ga gu na de ra ya shi ge ta ga gu ni ga re sun ani to so lo som chu sun sa ya de gun ka ta da jo nga en na ki cham jing ba ma tang sa chu man ice cha re shi ma ji de jem ice cha de la pa long pa je wo ja lan de to pan ya de ya ji yo de de ka sa la de ni gong pa so ye la chu zo ye ya na chu cha ma xia yu jo de ya ni re ka po de na chung ji gong ya de de go de ni tu la nang la gong ya tap je de ta de o ma ma kong sa go ne de na de chu cha mo ai se yu jo na re de ma bang so de de go ne doang ba kang so ye ya de na ze yang lamba pala kapo teatro ya go ne de dores.
So she said, the main thing is that it becomes such a point of focus that the concentration gets very, very refined. And when you're really practicing Tumo, it's like becomes constant, so that you always feel the bliss of the flame, and like in everything that you do, as you're eating, as you're drinking, as you're sleeping, as you're moving around, it's like you're always there with it. And then, you know, and it like the blissful warmth of the heat, it like pervades your entire body, so that, and then sometimes the body becomes very, very hot. And there's no sensation of cold anymore. It just becomes like blissful. Everything becomes kind of blissful and sensation. And so she said, you know, she did practice Tumo primarily in India, which is quite hot. It's not so cold. So she can't speak, you know, to like her own experience. However, like she definitely knows the power of the practice. And then she saw, you know, every like on, I think, on a yearly basis, or like, you know, those who are going through the cycles of the 3-year retreat in Tibet, like at Gargan, the nuns, they, you know, and it's so cold in the dead of winter, like if your urine becomes ice, if you spit, it becomes ice. It's very, very cold. And so these women are wearing, you know, like they're practicing Tumo, and all they have is what's called a tongra, which is like a little skirt, like a little tiny little mini skirt type of thing. And then like a kind of like something, you know, to cover their breasts. Otherwise they're like naked, and they kind of walk out in the middle of the dead cold, you know, it's snow everywhere and ice everywhere. And they have a bucket of water, like ice cold water. And they dip a white cotton shawl in the ice cold water in the freezing temperatures, and take that shawl and swing it around and cover their body in it. And then within minutes, they completely dry this ice cold cloth with the heat of the fire. And so she's seen that, you know, firsthand, like many times. So that's the result of practicing Tumo. So she has practiced it and she knows firsthand the benefits, but she hasn't done that with the water. She was in a warm environment. Yeah, because there's not like the water can only get so cold there. Like if you put like a bucket of ice water in, you know, it's not like the same as like when you're in Tibet. Yeah, but then but they can all see, because like, for instance, like the women who are like lay women who are not these practitioners, you know, it's so cold, they're like covered in warm clothes, you know, they have like these all like in gloves and furry hats and scarves, and they're still going like this. So, you know, they're still shivering with the cold.
In terms of the practice, it was really nice to have a focus, you know, that subtle focus. And there was some warmth. And then also I naturally started going into that, I believe it was suggested that there's this little sipping, 3 little sips in the breath, is that correct?
Well, that's what I understood, but then I doubted that because she didn't go further with that. But yeah, diniti la songai sine dampo tinati be sim pinamikpa chia la pe kare la sim neya di yul dawo yoga la pe yapo chumsong. Kain sine sim de la mikpa chini dini neya di yul dawo yapo chasong. Diniti chirang laksong e chichina ngan norwa ina hakamasong chirang di yang tesa Joe Chigwa Yuride. No, so that was misunderstanding. Yeah. It's just, I think what she was saying is actually, I understood it as sipping, but I think she was just saying that the wind goes down. It just is broad, breathe in and goes
long
down.
long sinna hakoyan long ya ti tini ma tang tini tele mikpa de ka se te wa mikpa de long tanyam long te ma tini te wa le te tini ti me te de chung chung de cha wo de chung chung de san ta ya long de ne ma shong de kang ge ne ya jer pa chlo lo chung chung de tang ya jer jam lo de tang
So Zoom yore, there's a Zoom yore. Okay, so it is a little bit like you can't, I'm a little bit, first she said no, but then she was saying that like
long
when.
de ya ma to ka de ne tu ka sa to ka pen na me ji tang me baro ma ji pa ji ya pa
Mhm,
pa ji de me de
mhm,
ma wong ji ra
mhm.
la de o de na ji ke di pa de me la to na de sa me de che sa wo na shi sam na ta
So the sipping is connected with the vase breath. And what we're doing is we're not actually doing the vase breath here, but we're doing a gentle vase breath. So she said we can actually employ a little bit of holding, just a little bit, not very much. Meaning that as you breathe in and then you hold just to the point where it's like comfortable to hold, but as the holding helps assist the wind kind of feeding the flame, the ember, so that, let me just finish what she said, so that it's glow. So, for instance, like if you blow, on an ember and it goes like, whoop, 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 that's exactly what she said. It goes like stronger, however she did it. And so that it like glows and it becomes stronger, and that glow becomes brighter. So that's what's happening as we're holding a little bit. And then you like release when it feels comfortable to release. And you can do again, but just in a way that's comfortable, and you can still continue to hold the winds there as you breathe naturally.
ta ting chan ta mala re pang mi ma re ga yo de re ka po che yo ne gen kan ne ya kan Himalaya re gang le yo de gang che chang ge yo ma re ta te ka re sin ta mo kan ya le cha ta ting chang pe de ya ken ga che no bo che de ne che na ba pa che ma yo sa shi de Arizona gen ka de na shi chang shu yo re ya kan na ya ta gen kan na ya na sa chi ka ni gang ba la ta sha so la ti Japan ji nam na ni so ko yor ta de so ka re sen ta mo nyam le che sen me ma bo ji so so me ne la kon pe ka ta kon to glo te na ya la chin ga mu tus ne che na ram pa to lo mi pan ya kan chan dan gan ro le ma to lo ta ni mi na he ji bo yu sa re so ga ne te de cha ro re.
So, we have, like, for instance, because what happens is there's so much warmth and heat that's generated by the tummo, that, we have these examples of yogis like Milarepa, who lived in the high mountain caves of the Milarepa in freezing cold temperatures with nothing but a white cloth, with like a white shawl. And like we look at Garchen Rinpoche, for instance, he, in Arizona, like whether it's summer, whether it's winter, he's wearing the same thing. He always just wears like sleeveless shirt and like, a thin zen, or thin robe and like sandals, whether it's snowing outside or summer. And that's because of the strength of his tummo practice. It really, he doesn't feel the sting of the cold. And he said one time when he went to Munich, it was winter, that he said he really doesn't like to bundle up in like, lots of clothes. And if it were up to him, he would just go naked. But that would be like, against the law. So he can't do that. But that he's most comfortable with like, no clothes, and that even in like the freezing cold temperature, very little clothes.
Kon ka re son ja ka chan da gan ro le ma to na to lo ko ya ta ni to pa me do
So he said, apart from it just being like, because he said if it were up to him, he wouldn't wear clothes, but since it would be against the law, he wears clothes.
che na ba kon re na shi ta mo ka se Arizona ta na ro
So you all probably have experience with that. You've probably seen Rinpoche walking around, in Arizona in the winter when it's snowing, and like sandals and sleeveless shirt and just like one thin, cotton shawl, yeah.
Nó có cái ta cho lòng rồi để jacket như sao sao cô.
And we have to wear like, you know, several layers of clothing, like a jacket and a sweater and
Ta thì chú xem sống rồi là.
so it looks like we're out of time, but do you actually do, but
Okay.
or do you,
I can wait for
Okay.
tomorrow.
and did you, Karuna, did you get your answer to the
And
question?
pretty much it was like, I just wanted to say that it was kind of like a gentle little bit of like fanning and
Mhm.
playing. Like anything intense.
Yes, that's exactly, I would say,
Okay,
yeah.
Moranti tata 제 샘내야게 유차 선생 대배야 버래.
She said it's really great what you said about it becoming a comfortable focus for your attention, like it's something to rest the mind on. That's really good.
그런데 샘내야게 샘때 맥바도 샘니 만에나 괜히 잘했으나 냠니 제 앞에 가르쳐 검자나 다른 리다다 또만 냠니 제 가서 티레 냠니 랑게 냠니 싸자야 상마데 샘때 델네타 그레스 맥바도 별나 맥바데는 가바로는 가바데를 떼지 샘때서 이때는 르르 제니니 가래서 다다고 검신이 다다버리 데마 다다도 진짜나다 다다고 라더니 사르바 샘때 릴리지네더니 네 맥바다 샘니데 찍더라고 그래.
So that's exactly what we're doing. In fact, with pretty much any meditation that we do, the object of our meditation should become something to rest our attention on, so that the mind and the object of the meditation kind of merge and become one, so that we relax into this stillness or this abiding of the attention resting on the object, the anchor of our meditation, which you know, can be, which is the point with all these channels, winds and drops meditation, whatever we're meditating on, we're focusing on Tumo or any of the visualizations that we do and these various like methods of meditation, it should all have the effect of resting the mind, resting the attention on the object, and being able to just stay there with the object without the mind, you know, getting caught up in proliferating thought, you know, without getting caught up in, you know, past thoughts of past, present, and future, but just resting with the object. And so when that's our experience, then we know we're right on track.
ini 다른 콘텐츠
Okay, so we can
ini
do
그러나
page 14.
다단 골드 단진제 뜻은 사가다 예배게메 사원제 다단 심신 단신열드나나비 양다 가조베단 주르 고시소 관주르시
By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root virtue, may I, all sentient beings, quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment.
May the teachings of the great Drupon Palkyi, who is omniscient Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara.
말아 대화지 스카와티 통통된 노야도 대인도 가장 말한 그 뭐또 유저 그러면 뭐만 거기 좋은 대인데 Koran 좋은 로야 돼서 치드 근데 대단 대단 잡을래는 뭐지 좋은 로야를 세대라 뭐 인치털마 손로는
The
섹스텐
the bukay chino yagmendo.
이거 하고 말아
Yini yang di dang yang.
Okay.
So she said, don't you think we should do it in Tibetan? Because she said we can do the prayer to be reborn in Dewachin and Sukhavati. And and she said in English, but I said, oh, but it's so nice in Tibetan. So anyway, she said English, but we can do either way, she said. And then because there are many people connected with the center, she heard that who passed away recently. So in particular, thinking of them with the aspiration that they may be reborn in Sukhavati, and also all the people in the world who have died recently. There have been many deaths. And so with the aspiration for all those beings to be liberated from suffering and reborn in Sukhavati, we can recite the Sukhavati prayer. Into
섹스텐
yes,
Emma